Welcome to Occupations, the podcast, where we discuss what it's like to hold specific jobs. Occupations is brought to you by lotsofmaps.com, where you fulfill your vintage map gifting needs. Visit lotsofmaps.com.
Hey everybody, welcome to Occupations, the podcast. I'm Andy Jaggelinzer. Welcome. We have a wonderful guest for you today, and this is a very different episode. We are going to get our hands dirty with this one. We are sitting on Cuttyhunk Island, which is just outside of Cape Cod in the Buzzards Bay area of Massachusetts, and took a ferry over here this morning, and I met up with this lovely woman, and her name is Charmaine Gahan, and she is here, and she's going to tell us a little bit about oysters. Welcome.
Very excited. Thank you so much.
All right, so you are an oyster farming owner.
Correct.
/farmer/
Correct.
everything.
Head of sales, head of IT, delivery person, HR, you name it.
I've just been educated myself on what oyster farming is. This has been an incredible day, and thank you for giving me the opportunity. And now she's going to teach you a little bit about what oyster farming is all about. Tell me, what is an oyster farm, first of all?
The first thing I would like to say is that I'm still learning. So I feel like oyster farming is part art and part science. And I've been fortunate to be on Cuttyhunk Island for my whole life. And I worked here as a teenager. So I've been learning this whole time. And the art of it, I've learned from my mentor, Seth Garfield, who started this business with his wife, Dorothy, in 1981. And the science is something we kind of work on over time to perfect what we're doing. But it was Seth and his wife, Dorothy, who pioneered all the techniques and equipment and also many of the relationships that we still have today. We have three parts to our business. The primary focus is oysters. We have a 30-acre lease on a great salt pond where we grow about 300,000 oysters every year. We have a catering operation where we do lobster bakes for visiting boaters every summer. And we also have a floating harbor raw bar that circulates the harbor every night between Memorial Day and Columbus Day. And we shuck and serve oysters every summer, and we've been doing it since 1981. So lots of repeat customers. We have, about 40 people who work for us during the course of a year. Most of those are during the summer part-time basis. And some of them, like my own children, are second-generation farmers.
Really great. It's a family affair for sure. This is a very dirty business. I'm talking to you right now, and your face is covered in mud, and it's awesome. I love it. I came out here, you threw some very long boots on me that probably didn't look so great on me, but I pulled it off, and we had quite an adventure this morning. So thank you for that. Let's go back to the beginning. Where'd you grow up?
I grew up in Concord, Massachusetts, and actually it was because of my neighbor in Concord that I came to Cuttyhunk. My neighbor, Eleanor Moore, owned what is known now as the Cuttyhunk Fishing Club. It's a bed and breakfast. And so we came as her guests and got to know all of her family very well. When she passed away in the 90s, my parents were able to purchase a home from her, and then that has become the base for my family. I share this house with my mother and my brother. I have 3 nieces and 2 daughters, and everyone in the family has worked at Cuttyhunk Shellfish.
Wow, fantastic. So you were coming out here at what age did you start coming here?
From the beginning, age 1.
Really?
And
okay.
We've gotten to know people in the community over the years. So we started as guests, but we became more and more involved. When I was a teenager, I worked at the Cuttyhunk Yacht Club, which is a very simple sailing school for children. As the years went on, like I said, I returned here with my children and my nieces. They all started working at Cuttyhunk Shellfish, as well as Cuttyhunk Yacht Club. And we just became more and more involved in the community. We would come and stay for 2 weeks, and then it turned into a month, and now it's turned into the whole year. But we also have taken on other roles in the community, which is really important to us. I'm an EMT here, part of the medical response team. My daughter is as well, actually. Like I said, my daughters and nieces have worked for the Cuttyhunk Yacht Club, which is a really important part of our summer community. We've helped with lawn mowing, solid waste, management of the cemetery. We enjoy being involved here, and it's something we try to do more of all the time. I'm on the town finance committee, which is super interesting because as a business owner here, it's really great to understand the dynamics of what keeps this community going and, what the issues are that maybe we need to tackle in the future.
How old were you when you started with the yacht club?
Let's see, I think I was a junior in high school. So my junior and senior year in high school, I worked as a sailing coach to children. And I would say it was more focused on teaching and keeping kids safe and happy than on sailing. I don't have a really extensive background as a boater or a sailor. I learned to sail here at Cuttyhunk Yacht Club myself. I also learned to drive power boats at Cuttyhunk Yacht Club, and now that's something I do for a living, and it's actually really important part of the work I do because I'm driving boats multiple times a week, crossing the bay safely in a variety of weather conditions year-round, as well as landing our harbor raw bar boat gently alongside multi-million-dollar yachts to serve them oysters. And I do tell everyone, I say everything I know I learned at the Cuttyhunk Yacht Club, so that is a true story.
So at what age did you decide oysters was going to be a little something that you wanted to try at least?
So like I said, Seth and Dorothy Garfield started this business in 1981, and I've known them both my whole life. I actually taught sailing to their children, their 3 children. And when I was a teenager, in addition to working at the yacht club, it was natural to also spend some time working on the oyster farm for Seth. And I can't say that I remember it super well, but it must have been formative enough because I actually wrote my college admissions essay about the experience. And it's really fun to go back and read that essay. I still have it because it's so detailed, and the experiences I had then that must have been so formative to me are the same exact experiences I have every day, including today with you.
I'm sure I threw a little something weird in there, but I'm sure I got in the way a few times, but they got the job done, which was good. All right, so you started doing a little oyster work on the farm. What was the first thing you did?
I worked on the West End farm, which is where we were today, getting just as muddy as we got today. And I think that was the fun of it. I also remember clearly being fascinated by just the quantity and variety of wildlife that we saw every day. And that's still something I really enjoy even today. It's so fun to see the cycles in nature, whether it's migrating birds or you see different fish at different times of year. And I think my big takeaway at the time was because of that experience, I thought I wanted to be a marine biologist. And I, through my high school, was able to do a sailing trip with the Sea Education Association. They're based in Woods Hole, aboard Westward. And we went for a week in the Gulf Stream of Florida. And what I learned there was that I got very seasick.
Oh.
Growing up sailing little boats with Cuttyhunk Yacht Club, I never got seasick. But as soon as I went aboard a large sailing vessel for the first time in my life, I was seasick for the whole time. And I, unfortunately, allowed myself to get discouraged because I thought to myself, well, I'm not going to be a marine biologist. And no one really ever told me, actually, there's many ways to be a marine biologist without being aboard a vessel full time and experiencing seasickness. So unfortunately, I didn't pursue marine biology after that. So when I went to college, I wasn't thinking at all about majoring in science.
Okay. But you say unfortunately, but you're certainly happy doing what you're doing now. So you certainly didn't miss out on being happy and
I'm glad I came back to it, and it was, I think everybody's life is a journey with different chapters. And now when I look back on those chapters, there's a kind of logic to it, but it's not like I knew at the time where it would all lead.
Right. Okay. All right. So you worked here through high school.
Correct. And then college for a few years as well.
And college too. So where did you go to school?
University of Chicago.
Okay. And what were you studying? I know you said marine biology, but not really.
I became a history major because I allowed myself to get intimidated by science and math and thought that I should choose a course of study where I could just read books and write papers. I also knew I wanted to study abroad. And that's been something that's been pretty important in my life. I studied abroad in France. I met my husband, the person who's now my husband, there. And later in life, when we were newlyweds, an opportunity came up to move abroad again, and we took it. So it's definitely become a formative part of who I am as a person, living overseas, having other cultural experiences, knowing that there are different ways of being out there and finding ways to connect with people. When my husband and I were married, we moved to South Korea. We lived there for 5 or 6 years. My 2 children were born there. And at the time, my dad was very ill, so we decided to, we eventually moved back to Concord just because that's where my parents lived and it was easy to be close to them. But I have to say, even though I can't have an oyster farm in Concord, it has been great for this business because of my proximity to Boston. So, for example, Seth Garfield, who previously owned the business, he didn't enjoy driving to Boston to deliver oysters. Of course, that's the biggest market for oysters. And for me, it's a 20 to 30 minute drive.
Right.
I actually designed my delivery route to match my commute. So on my way home, I can easily stop and deliver oysters. And so in my case, it's actually pretty advantageous to live in the suburbs of Boston.
That's great. Oysters. Let's talk about oysters themselves.
Let's talk about
What
oysters.
do you know about oysters? I mean, probably everything, but when did you have your first oyster? How old were you?
I definitely remember enjoying oysters, eating oysters on Cuttyhunk Island for the first time. I can't say I've had many oysters that are not Cuttyhunk oysters because I've spent most of my vacation and free time here. And I do remember when I went to college in Chicago, my dad enjoyed coming to visit me sometimes, and we would go and look for oysters. We actually went to Shaw's Crab House because we perceived that as an excellent place to get oysters. And in recent years, I reconnected with them, and I do sell Cuttyhunk oysters to Shaw's in Chicago. So that was kind of a fun connection to make. And on the topic of oysters, I would say I'm still very much learning. What we do on our farm is different from other farms. Probably each farm is different. Each place has its own geography and its own challenges. So in our case, we buy oyster seed from Fisher's Island. We purchase about 300,000 a year. It's a pretty big effort to get that oyster seed out to our farm because it comes across on the Fisher's Island ferry. We pick it up in the refrigerated van. Then we transport it on our boat, making sure that we don't overload the boat to the point of sinking. So that can be a few trips. We cross our fingers and hope that the weather is going to cooperate. The bags are heavy, but we are usually able to recruit some help. It happens in April, which is also a time of year where there aren't that many people here on the island. So my daughters and their friends have been great about chipping in. We've had a lot of people actually chip in with seed over the years. I know when Seth and Dorothy did it, a lot of their friends would come help out. And then I'm usually able to convince some of our, summer crew to return for a few days, maybe over their school break, and we make it happen. But it's a big effort. So we get the 300,000 oysters in the water. Sometimes that happens over the course of several delivery days. And once it's in, it's just, waiting for the water temperature to warm up and maintaining and taking care of it, preventing biofouling. And then eventually we get to a sorting process where we differentiate it by size. And from then on in, it's just a maintenance until the oysters are mature enough to be harvested.
So Seth was telling me that when they come in as seed, they're about but the size of a dime.
Correct.
And when you're done, the oyster is the size of an orange, maybe?
Yeah,
something
3
like
inches
that?
is generally 2.5 to 3 inches is the size that restaurants like.
Right. So they do a pretty good growth over the summer.
Correct.
Spring and summer, and that's great. So let's just back up a tiny bit. So when Seth started this, what was his knowledge? Do you know about oysters, or was he just making this up as he went?
I started with a pretty good baseline of knowledge, is my understanding. He was a zoology major at University of Rhode Island, and I believe, first of all, he did work on 1 or 2 oyster farms. He worked at Fisher's Island. He also worked at the Cuttyhunk Oyster Company on the Cape, so he was able to learn his trade from others. We actually have this really neat historic relationship with Fisher's Island. As far as I know, we're the only 2 farms that use lantern nets, and it's, because that's where he went to learn aquaculture. But one of his first jobs was working at a power plant, and I think one of the things he did was monitoring for shellfish as an invasive issue for a power plant to deal with. So I think he quickly pivoted from seeing he didn't really like to see shellfish as a problem. He saw it as, both environmentally beneficial solution and a really special food that people would enjoy and maybe even pay a premium for. So I know he's been through a lot of trial and error over the years. Like, for example, we buy our seed now. We buy the largest seed we can get. He's experimented with different seed over the years. When you buy smaller seed, you have to get more of it because more of it's going to die. You're also assuming more risk because again, more of it's going to die the longer you hold it.
Right.
So he assumed a lot of that risk over the years. And I'm fortunate to benefit from, like I said, his knowledge and the art and the science that he developed over time.
So Seth is still working for you.
Correct.
You bought this how long ago?
3 years ago, and we've been very fortunate to have Seth continue working with us. He is a year-round Cuttyhunk resident and has many, many jobs here. He's important to the community, and he also just loves working. We are trying to help him find his path to retirement, but very grateful for everything he does. Particularly, he's a gifted boat captain. He is helps us with a lot of our equipment issues, troubleshooting, and kind of a jack of all trades.
I spent a little time with him, and he is certainly a knowledge base. Certainly knows a lot about a lot, which is invaluable for sure.
I think he's mentored probably hundreds of students over the years.
Wow.
And we actually, I told you I wrote my college essay about Cuttyhunk shellfish. Many of the kids who work for us have done the same. And we always imagine college admissions officers somewhere saying, oh, here we go, another essay from Cuttyhunk shellfish farms.
That's not a bad thing. It's good advertising, if anything,
Yeah.
right? All right, so let's get into the day-to-day.
Sure.
This is a very unusual job, obviously. There aren't many. How many farms would you say there are in Massachusetts, ballpark?
Oof. I wouldn't know, maybe a couple hundred.
Okay.
But those are going to vary in size.
Right. And what would you consider yourself, like a medium farm? Or
I would say we're small.
You're a smaller farm. Yep. Okay.
We plant 300,000 oysters every spring.
Mm-hmm.
Some portion of that is going to die, depending on the year. I mean, there's certain forces that are out of our control. If a major storm came, we might lose a lot one year.
Right.
And we prioritize our summer raw bar business. So we're going to always save some portion of that crop to sell here on the island between Memorial Day and Columbus Day. And the rest we sell year round to restaurants.
Very good. So Cuttyhunk does have its share of tourism for sure. Right now it is early or mid-September and it's quiet. Everyone's back to school, so it's nice and quiet. But I imagine it's pretty hopping right in the thick of things in the middle of the summer. So you talk about your raw bar. You've got a little world headquarters. You said right on the pier there, which is a little kitchen.
Absolutely.
And you serve all kinds of things, not just oysters, but you're serving chowder and all kinds of other things as well. And because you're so close to where the action is, where all the boats are, you've got a little boat that you go and do deliveries. Like you said, you have to gently park next to the multi-million-dollar yachts and hand out the food. That must be interesting in its own right.
It's super fun. I really enjoy getting out on the raw bar boat with the kids. There's a kind of energy that you get in the harbor every night. People are on vacation. They're super excited to see us pull up alongside and shuck oysters. And, it's a Cuttyhunk tradition, again, since 1981. So a lot of boaters out there do know about us. And, Seth loves to offer them a complimentary sunset on the house. But we have a lot of, fun chit-chat back and forth with the boaters. We also like to tell them that they can reach us on the International Shellfish Hailing Channel, Channel 72. But yeah, I think it's a kind of unique business. I think part of what people like about it is it's a little bit of a throwback. Last year I thought about painting the raw bar boat and everyone clearly did not want that to happen because they like it with the nicks and bruises that it has. Also our workforce by necessity is young people, high school and college students. And so we have a lot of fun doing what we do. Occasionally we make mistakes because everyone's learning,
Sure,
me included. But I think people see that and they appreciate and understand it.
So you have a tradition here for sure, and you want to stick to that tradition, or at least people want you to stick to that tradition.
Right.
And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that.
It is important
as
to
long as
us.
they're happy, right? Yeah, that's great.
And I think, when I took over the business a couple years ago, that was one of the things that was most important to me, was continuing the traditions that we have as the largest employer here, as an organization where we have a lot of fun.
That's great. All right, let's get to the dirty stuff. So I showed up, I hopped on the back of an ATV, and off we went through some rocky terrain to the other side of the island, and where it was very, very remote. and we went to what you call the Great Salt Pond. Is that correct?
Yes. The West End is what people refer to it as. It's the southwest side of the island where there is a 30-acre Great Salt Pond.
All right, and so those waters sort of belong to you to some degree. You take up a fair amount of the space there. So all of a sudden, this very strange raft came and picked me up, and it was a lot of plywood and a lot of 2x4s and a little teeny boat motor and a big table in the middle.
Yep.
Basically, that was it. And we hopped aboard, and the work was already happening when I got here. So tell me a little bit about what happened today.
Sure. It's our Huckleberry Fin Raft. So we send out a crew every morning. We meet at 8 o'clock. In the summer, it's 5 or 6 people. We go out on the raft, and a typical day would be pulling maybe 25 nets to harvest and maybe another 50 nets that we're going to process in one way or another, whether we are putting those oysters into the sorting machine or rolling and drying them, which promotes, oyster health. So we typically will be out there for, I would say, 3 to 4 hours. We have a list every day of what needs to be done. It follows kind of a master plan. And in the course of a few weeks, we would hope to handle in some way all 1,000 lantern nets that are in the water. So there is a lot of heavy lifting and manual labor involved.
Boy, I'd say I watched a lot of it. I stood out of the way, like I said, so not to cause too much problem, but there was some physical stuff happening over there. You especially, by the way.
It is a labor-intensive process. We call it the West End full-body workout.
Very good. So obviously in the spring you're planting. So you're taking these lantern nets, which are 3-tiered
Correct.
nets. You can imagine it's sort of like a 3-level condo almost for oysters. And you put them in there and you dangle them off a buoy in the water.
Right.
And they kind of do their own thing for the most part.
Exactly. So the neat thing about oysters is you don't need to feed them. They're going to feed on naturally occurring plankton in the water. So in the spring, as soon as the water temperature starts to hit 45 degrees, things are going to grow. Plankton will grow. Oysters will feed on plankton and grow, but so will everything else in the environment. And that's what we need to keep on top of. And then, so during the summer, the water temperature increases. If the water temperature were to be too high, that would be bad for oysters. It could kill them. We do constantly monitor the water temperature, the salinity, and then everything starts to cool down again in the fall. So right now, I didn't take the temperature today, but my guess would be somewhere between 65 and 70 degrees, which is great. Everything's still in ideal growing conditions right now. And as we get into probably November, it will start to slow down.
And they actually go into a little bit of a hibernation, I
Correct.
understand.
Yep. So it's almost like a giant refrigerator once the temperature dips below 45 degrees Fahrenheit.
And they'll survive that. And do they all survive that, or is there some loss there as well?
There's always going to be some loss, but I think we probably have more loss because of water temperature being too high than too cold. But salt water freezes at, I think, 28 degrees. Mm-hmm. And because we are off the coast, our climate is a little more moderate than the mainland. So in recent years, we haven't had a ton of ice and freezing. Honestly, I think it's the handling process that's going to kill more oysters than what's happening naturally. If we were to leave oysters out to air dry in the sun and the day is too hot, they'll die. If we leave them out to air dry in the cold they're going to freeze and die. So definitely everyday weather conditions are governing every aspect of what we do.
So what's left after the summer is added to the inventory in the spring, but those are more mature already in the spring for sure. Mm-hmm. How many do you think are left out there? And I know it varies from year to year, but how many do you think are left out there right through the winter?
Well, we make sure to leave at least 40,000 that we're going to need in the summer. And I have to say, this is only my 3rd year of doing it, so I'm still kind of getting a handle on what the numbers are right now.
Sure.
But there is a sweet spot. So, for example, I have to kind of, I don't want to say put a limit, but I need a plan. It's not a limit. It's having a plan. I need to have a plan for how many oysters I want to sell every week to restaurants.
Right.
Because I want to serve those customers year round. So I can't sell too many because I'm going to run out. And if I don't sell enough oysters, I'm going to have too many oysters in the pond. And certainly they will keep growing. And at some point they're going to get too big or they're going to die. And then they lose their value.
So there's a true balance in a lot of things with this business, not just monetarily, and but keeping them alive, keeping them. There's so many opportunities for them to have a terrible death.
Yeah.
And so monitoring and having that knowledge base of knowing when to do what.
Correct.
It's got to be a big part of it. And of course, Mother Nature plays a big role in this. You can't control Mother Nature, so I understand.
Definitely. I mean, it's definitely, Seth always says Mother Nature runs our lives, but it does, because, I would say the limiting factors, we can't plant 1 million oysters because of a number of reasons. One being that we're not going to have the labor force here to take care of them. And the second one being we have to take everything off here on our 24-foot boat, and there's a limit to how much weight we can put on that boat. We've pushed that limit. Trust me. Like, there was one week we put maybe 6,000 or 7,000 oysters on there. It started to sink. We just had to drive.
Wow.
So, we are limited by being in a remote location, contending every day and every week with weather, and primarily our workforce. As you saw, it's a remote location. So we also there's a limit to how much mechanized equipment we can have out there, because things are going to break. And then we got to get it out of there.
Right.
Or we need the skills and knowledge to fix it ourselves.
Let me ask you a question. Hopefully you can answer this. The fluctuation of pricing.
Mm-hmm.
You always see market price on menus and things like that. Do you have a chance to control that based on your inventory, or is that not controlled by you?
I'm trying to figure that out myself, because, for example, you'll see buckashuck on menus, and that's been going on forever. And I understand why restaurants do it, because they're going to sell drinks and other food. But from a perspective of a farmer, I mean, what other product is there where the price hasn't changed in many years?
Right.
So that's something I've been working on understanding. I mean, I'm a wholesaler dealer, so I do get to set my own prices.
Let's talk a little bit about what I saw today. So you guys were doing a little bit of harvesting. You were also doing what you call rolling.
Correct.
Of the inventory. And I saw you do a little part of that rolling is cleaning the equipment and getting all the stuff off of it. Sorry to use a technical term like that, stuff, but that's my knowledge base. So the harvesting, you are literally just pulling up the nets, putting them on the table, figuring out which ones are still alive, sorting them, but also understanding which ones are not big enough to go to market yet. And so you put those aside to eventually return back to the nets. Correct. Okay.
You've done well. You've done well. A+.
All right.
So correct. I mean, right now, because the seed has been in the water for several months, it's all grown. So it's essentially organized into different sizes. So when we pull up a net that has already been designated as extra large, that's mostly harvestable stuff. And so at that point, it's just hand sorting, just to verify that it's the correct size to go to market. Occasionally we find some dead ones. And then, as you said, those that are not yet mature enough for market, we call those carrybacks. They can go back in the water. And I don't really know for sure when those will be ready. It depends on their genetic programming. Maybe some of them will be ready later this year, and maybe some won't be ready until next spring.
Right. So you're taking the ones that are going to be carried back, and you're putting them out in the sun for a day. Correct,
24 hours.
And what does that do?
It's called air drying, and it's a very common practice in the industry, and it kills the biofouling, and it also causes the oyster to grow a stronger shell.
Very good. And obviously the oyster lives through that without any issue.
Most of the time.
Okay. And so the equipment gets covered in all kinds of biofoiling. Explain what that is exactly.
Yep. So I guess biofouling, simply put, is anything that is competing for food or space with the oysters. So in our case, there's a lot of tunicates and sea grapes. Other farms might experience a lot of mussels or barnacles. And again, the best way to combat those organisms is simply air drying. So The nets we looked at today had been in the water maybe 3 to 4 weeks, and I would say that was light biofouling. You could see that it was some of those organisms were just starting to grow. So, this is where having enough labor becomes an important component. It's such heavy manual labor. If we don't have enough people here to do it, we're going to get behind. The biofouling will get worse, and eventually the quality of the oyster would suffer. I mean, if the biofouling took over, the oyster would die because it wouldn't be able to filter feed. And
you called that light fouling, but it was pretty covered. The nets were pretty covered in it, and you literally, after you had taken the oysters out, you just whacked the thing a few hundred times against the cement, and away the biofouling went. Of course, you put it up in the sun for a day plus, and the sun sort of kills off all of that stuff. So you got to maintain these things obviously throughout the year too. It's not just put the things in the water and just wait for the money to roll in.
Yeah, we have something to do every week of the year. There's something to do out there.
Right, that's great. So you have a sorter as well. I didn't get to see that work, but how often are you using the sorter?
During the summer, we're using that daily. That's a common piece of equipment on oyster farms these days. Like some farms will have multiple sorters. The tube that spins will have holes of different sizes. So yeah, we're going to use that primarily when we're processing the oyster seed. So between April and end of August. And right now, we don't need it so much because everything's grown enough that we're going to sort it by hand.
Right. So you guys were a little rough with these things, and I got a little concerned for a minute there, but then you kind of enlightened me that the edge of the shell it's actually healthy to knock that off.
Correct.
So explain that to me a little bit.
My understanding is simply that by breaking the bill of the shell, it's going to cause the oyster to grow a stronger shell in a deeper cup, which is what people want in the industry.
Very good. So kind of like tough love, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So we know that the ones that you're going to harvest, that you actually are harvesting, and you get them all ready. You wash them. You put them in crates and you wash them. Any kind of debris, you're knocking it off by washing. And then right into the bag, right there on the platform.
That's right.
It's not going to a manufacturing place where it gets it gets done by some robotic machine. This is all done by hand.
Correct. No processing facility. And because of our remote location, we don't have a power washer, but also we find that we take it to the restaurant and they wash it. So we bring it to them clean, but they're going to wash it again.
Sure. That makes a lot of sense.
Lotsofmaps.com. Vintage, local, national, and world maps for an affordable price. 99% of our maps are $25 or less. Great as gifts. Frame them or put them under glass for your home, vacation home, or as a memory of a special place. Lotsofmaps.com.
I got to ask, is there a computer involved in this at all in this company?
Definitely.
There is.
In fact, Seth likes to tease me because everything I do is on a spreadsheet.
Got it. I see a lot of paper invoices and little books with handwriting in it, and it's lovely. It's a really great system I'm sure you have.
We have fine-tuned it for sure over the years. And it's interesting because there is technology out there now, but for a farm of my size, it doesn't always make sense.
The physical activity that's happening out there, I know you employ a lot of kids, but man, you got dirty. I mean, you were doing some heavy lifting out there as well. And that's got to be a positive, I guess. And, as we get older as humans, it must take its toll too, but the kids seem to love it.
They do. It's, for me, my favorite part of the job is the physicality of it and getting dirty. And I bet you that for the kids who are working out there, they feel the same way.
That's great. So you have high school kids that come at certain times of the year during the summer. You've got college-age kids and recently graduated college-age kids that are still working for you now. And, of course, yourself and Seth.
Correct.
And so there's a good workforce, good young workforce working with experience here, and you get the job done. So once they're in the bags, right there on the platform, and you're done for the day, away you go, and we take the 10-minute, very, very slow raft ride over to the other side of the pond, and right onto the ATVs, over to the dock, put them on ice immediately.
Exactly. Probably from the time those oysters are harvested to when they're on ice, I would say it's less than 30 minutes. And in, another hour from now, they're going to be in the refrigerator of the restaurant that ordered them.
Which is great. So they go onto a little boat that you have, a couple of boats, and you send them to the shore, and there you've got a refrigerated truck, and away you go.
Correct. You will enjoy seeing that process a little bit later today. Unbeknownst to you, you're going to be recruited to help unload the boat and deliver some oysters, but part of the experience.
I look forward to it. I really do. It's going to be great. So it's a delicacy for sure around these parts. And I know that there are different oysters that come from different parts of the country, parts of the world. Mm-hmm. And I understand there is a difference in taste based on the style of the oyster and the environment that they're grown in. That's correct.
So
right?
There's an expression in the industry, merroir, which is a variation of terroir from the wine industry, which expresses the concept that they're going to take on the flavor of the place where they were grown. Mm-hmm. And the factors there could be gear to some extent, but certainly it's salinity, it's the environment, the soil type. Is it a rocky bottom, a muddy bottom? But salinity is one of the major factors. So our oyster is known as a briny oyster, and that's because, as you saw, we're in a great salt pond. So we do get tidal flow twice a day. The oysters taste of the place where they're grown, and I think for people who love Cuttyhunk oysters, when they taste our oyster, it really brings them back to the trip they had here, maybe even when they were a child, or that time they were out in the harbor and the raw bar boat pulled up alongside. I would say that's something that's special about Cuttyhunk. I've been to other oyster farms where it's just kind of a 2-acre imaginary rectangle on the water, whereas Cuttyhunk people come here, they walk to the top of the hill, they see the sunset, they see that historic monument in the pond, and they see the buoys on the water, and then they go down to the raw bar shack and they have an oyster that was harvested this morning.
Wow. Freshly
shucked. And so I think that taste is something that you really can't quantify or determine, but it's very much, I think, what makes people love Cuttyhunk oysters. And or they may have had an interaction with us over the past 44 years.
Sure.
Maybe Seth took them off on his boat when they had an injury. Maybe they had us cater their wedding. So we actually have those really neat connections through and through with the community of Cuttyhunk and the greater area.
Fantastic. Now, I know when you go to a raw bar, it's almost like a wine list or a craft beer list of where your oysters come from. It's not just, hey, these are oysters, this is what you get. There's different tastes, and people have different needs that they want to fulfill, and certainly one of your oysters are right on there on that menu.
Yep, for sure. Yeah, it's something we're very proud. I'm personally very proud to continue this tradition that Seth started, but there's really nothing I can do about the way they taste. The only thing I can control is keeping them healthy.
Very good. And dousing them in cocktail sauce and things like that, you are going to change the entire taste of the oyster. You're really not going to taste the oyster from what I understand. Is that correct?
Well, I think people should enjoy an oyster any way it makes them happy. But yes, of course, if you douse it in cocktail sauce, you're going to taste cocktail sauce. But no judgment here.
So buying a jar of cocktail sauce and just drinking it is probably a way to save money.
Yeah.
But not necessarily the way to eat an oyster if you're a purist.
Correct.
All right. Fair enough.
I've had them with kimchi. I've had them grilled with maple bourbon butter, and there's no bad way to eat an oyster.
I agree.
We are the smallest community in Massachusetts, which is kind of special about us.
Is that physical size or also the amount of people that are here?
I guess I assume just the number of people.
Yeah.
We do have a one-room schoolhouse that
Very nice.
was active up until recently.
Wow.
Who knows? Maybe some of the young people you met today will have children who will return to the one-room schoolhouse someday.
Wow.
But I think the thing, that most people don't know, let's say you go to a restaurant in Boston and order a Cuttyhunk oyster, maybe because it has a funny name or you liked the way the menu described it. They don't realize, as you've seen today, the amount of labor that went into it, the hand sorting that went into choosing those oysters, or the boat ride that you're going to experience across the bay, which, we have to do every week. So
you get to do.
Yes, I have the privilege of doing, certainly. And I actually always say to my family, any day that you get to drive a boat is a good day.
There you go. There you go. You truly love what you do here, I can tell.
Yeah, I feel very fortunate. And, I wouldn't have guessed that this is what I would be doing right now, but I'm so glad I am, and I feel very lucky. But I also have to say, in all fairness, it's not, a one-man show. It's part of what I enjoy about what I do, and I find very humbling, is all of the effort of so many people that go into making this work. And I think the other thing that, people don't realize about Cuttyhunk Shellfish is it's an oyster, but it's also a community. It's young people coming here and having formative life experiences like I had when I was their age.
Right.
It's, being the largest employer on the island and taking that responsibility to heart. And, I think to some extent, it's all of the things that we do as community members here, wanting to be good citizens, like wanting to take care of this environment socially, economically, environmentally. That to me is Cuttyhunk Shellfish. So it's an oyster, but it's a lot more than an oyster.
That totally makes sense. Seriously, that really does. And I'm glad I did this. Now, I don't always get to experience the jobs of people that I talk to, and this was an opportunity that I sort of forced upon you, which was very nice of you to do that for me. But now I have a great understanding of what it goes through, and I will now never look at an oyster the same.
Yes, good.
Sure.
Well, I'm glad you came. It is a job where experiencing it will help you understand it better.
Absolutely. And it's kind of an old world sort of feel here. There's no machines, there's no robotics, there's no virtual reality, there's nothing like that. It's literally people taking oysters and making them and riding boats and physically making it happen. And it's a wonderful, wonderful thing.
I agree. And I think we all treasure that about it as well. We have little handwritten signs up at the Raw Bar Shack, because if you need something and we're not there, you can still call us and we will come. And
the word farm really kind of fits, because you're doing a job that, like you said, has been passed down from generation to generation, and it's hard labor. You get a food product when you're done. Yeah. And it's no different than that, except you don't have the fancy equipment. You can't get a tractor out there in the pond there. But that's really says a lot. The family farm is
for sure. And on top of that, I would add it's a food product that's sustainable. It's good for the environment, and it's a little bit of a specialty food that people enjoy on celebratory occasions. So it is a really lovely thing to be a part of through and through.
Very good. So let's talk about the business. So when you took over, you wanted to make some changes, but not wholesale changes. I mean, there were certain things that you saw that you wanted to kind of make your own mark in. What were some of those things?
That's right. So I, on one hand, wanted to keep things very much the same in terms of the spirit and the culture of the company. We're the only year-round employer on the island, and we're the largest employer. We have a long history of mentoring young people and students. I employed about 44 people last year, so I very much wanted to keep that up. I guess I saw opportunity more on the side of technology. So, for example, Seth, the previous owner, was very much a, pen and paper guy, lots of lists, doing things by hand, whereas I'm someone who always has a spreadsheet. So when I took over, there were just a number of kind of updates and upgrades that felt natural to me, updating the website, maybe updating our back-end systems. I brought the Square. A perfect example would be we weren't taking credit card payments very much previously. That was in part because we didn't have good access to the internet. So the first thing I did was buy Starlink. Then I bought the Square. And now I would say 80% of our transactions are credit card, including in the harbor. And people are still surprised to this day. They come to the harbor. They think we're an all cash business because they've been trained for 44 years to bring their cash to Cuttyhunk. So there's been a lot of customer-facing upgrades with regards to using technology and a lot behind the scenes as well.
You're not adverse to taking cash, though, I assume. No one is, right?
I actually like having records, but yeah, of course. The kids love cash tips for all of you listeners out there who come to the harbor.
There you go. Cash is king. So let's talk about your customers a little bit. I know there's restaurants and things that you send to as well.
We do have a wholesale business to restaurants, which are mostly in Boston and New York.
So was that a built-in list for you? Had Seth grown that restaurant list over the years?
Some of them. So keeping in mind that he was primarily a school teacher and the shellfish farm was started as kind of a side business for him, he did grow some really cool relationships throughout his career. Specifically, worth mentioning is Grand Central Oyster Bar in New York City, which has one of the largest menus I've ever seen of oysters. And I believe we are the longest standing oyster on their menu. So he definitely brought relationships like that to the table, but he also had worked through distributors because that was convenient for him. And for me, I wanted to go direct to restaurant customers myself, partially because I have the time for it, but also because there's a margin there that means a lot to me.
Sure.
I also have a license as a wholesaler dealer, which not all oyster farmers have. So I really wanted to take advantage of that to get the best price possible from my customers.
Makes sense.
So I right now have a list of maybe 12 to 20 customers that I serve once a week. I am the delivery person that walks through the door and puts the oysters in their refrigerator. And I've really enjoyed cultivating those relationships.
I bet. You do it all. You got your delivery person. You're seeing the beginning right to the end. That's awesome.
It's part of what I have enjoyed most in taking over this business is having the exposure. I mean, I'm learning every day. So being able to make decisions about everything, whether it's payroll, strategy, finance, sales, social media, marketing, even down to the merch that we sell. It's been really fun to make the decisions and, sink or swim with those decisions for every aspect of the business.
So did you have any sales background? Because that may not be easy to just sell without really knowing.
I think, honestly, it's been a really fun and good learning curve for me. And I'm fortunate that my husband does work in sales, so he's been my constant unpaid advisor on the side. But it's been honestly really empowering for me to just walk into the door unannounced and forge a new relationship that turns into meaningful revenue for me. So honestly, the way I built my customer list was very organic. In some cases, it was a restaurant I had passed on the road or that had a good reputation. I actually really enjoy polling people who I know and asking them, what's one of your favorite places to get oysters? And I've had many great recommendations through the years. I honestly keep a running list. And so I've walked into those restaurants with a sample and I said, hey, one of my customers told me they love eating oysters here and they would love to see the Cuttyhunk oyster on your menu. I brought you a sample. What can we do to get on your menu? And that's been super successful. So I've managed to develop some really close relationships with some of these customers. I see them once a week. We chat, and I'm very grateful for their business and support.
That's great. Do you ever ask them if they know people in other places?
Definitely.
That might be a good resource, right?
Definitely. So that's how I've developed my customer list. Of course, there is turnover in the restaurant industry,
Sure.
so that can be a challenge, but I always have kind of a backlog of places in my mind that if I needed another customer, here's where I would go next. And to be honest, I also base it a little bit around my personal commute and what's convenient to me. So, for example, right now I deliver oysters in Boston, but not in Cambridge. I would definitely expand to Cambridge. It's just, my restaurants are kind of clustered in the same area in Boston, so I haven't needed to cross the river yet. But I hope to get there someday.
Got it. That's great. So other than doing some of the selling yourself and distributing yourself, what other kind of changes did you make?
One of the things I've done is just focus on inventory management, and that has to do with supply and demand, understanding customer demand, making sure I have the supply to meet it. I learned a lot as I went through the process of acquiring the business, forecasting the sales, forecasting the expenses. I also took a few steps that I thought would be beneficial. For example, I registered as a woman-owned business, which was like a 20-step process I had to go through with the state. I registered my vehicle as a farm vehicle, which was another 20-step process that I had to go through. I applied for a number of grants, and I was fortunate to actually receive some of those. So I did spend a lot of time at the beginning just setting up the framework. We actually have, as an example, a trademark. So, I learned about how to renew that process. There were just honestly so many steps that I wouldn't have thought about before I bought the business that I learned as I went.
Spending a little time with Seth, I learned that he is a big cheerleader of yours. We spent a little bit of time alone while you were out doing some oystering, and he had just nothing but great things to say, and he loved the changes that you've made. I know he was very proud that you went out and got grants and got a truck for yourself and things like that, and he seems to be a real big cheerleader of what you're doing.
Well, thank you. That's very kind. I've known him my whole life, and as well as his family, and I think it's been important to both of us that the cultures and traditions of Cuttyhunk shellfish are continued. And, he cares a lot about the young people on the island. He's mentored a lot of them, and that's something I care a lot about too. Of course, above and beyond Cuttyhunk shellfish, he's played a lot of different roles in the island, and that's also something I'm trying to emulate. So
Sure.
I guess it's important for maybe people to understand this is an oyster farm and it's a business, but we also just take a lot of pride in the role that we play in this community. That's kind of quality of this business that you can't write it into a business plan, but it's at our core.
Yeah, and obviously growing up, spending your summers and weekends and things like that, you really have an affinity for the island. I mean, he could have sold it to somebody who's never been to the island before, and that would not have gone over well, I'm sure.
It would have been interesting.
But keeping it in-house is certainly a really nice thing.
Yeah. And, it went from being a family business for his family to a family business with my family. My husband, daughters, nieces all participate, and it's really important to our success.
Great.
I didn't grow up knowing I was going to be an oyster farmer. I didn't graduate from college thinking I would be an oyster farmer, and I came around to it a little bit later in life. But I think I'm pretty excited by the fact that this is what I'm doing. I mean, I would be doing something. Probably, if I would have guessed, I would have guessed I would be in an office somewhere.
Yeah.
Doing some kind of business development or marketing or admin assistant.
Right.
So I'm pretty happy that instead I get to be outside, getting muddy, driving boats, learning how to troubleshoot engines. And, I definitely have more skills that I need to acquire and more knowledge, but it's been really important in my life. And I would encourage young people, just as many skills as you can acquire, the better. It might be helpful to you professionally. It might be helpful to you personally. In the past 5 years, I got certified as an EMT. I got my license as a captain. And I guess when I step back from it, I'm pleased that I was able to do that kind of a little bit later in life. I wouldn't have necessarily expected that. And I hope my daughters and other young people out there could maybe take away the idea that you can make big changes that are unexpected, and you can do it, and it's okay.
Well, you've accomplished a lot, and you probably could have just coasted and sort of kept things the same, but you've seen a different path slightly, and you've done a lot of succeeding and making yourself better. I feel fortunate to be doing what I'm doing, but I also feel fortunate that I somehow thought this was a good idea a couple years ago when I started down this path. Because probably if I had thought about it too much, maybe I wouldn't have. But I'm glad I am where I am right now. Charmaine Gahan, thank you so much for teaching me about oysters, giving me the opportunity to witness what it takes to do it, and to give us some insight into what it takes to be a farmer on the sea. Thank you so much for that.
Well, thank you for coming and spending the day with us. And, every oyster farm is different. The way we do things is maybe a little bit different, but we're very proud and very honored to be doing it.
So eat more oysters, I think, is the message here.
Yes.
All right, well, stay tuned for another episode of Occupations coming soon.
Occupations has been brought to you by lotsofmaps.com. Please follow Occupations the podcast on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to find information about our next episode or to see what past episodes are available.